our next speaker. So I teach at university, and many of my students don't know how to sketch. And I found out that they don't know how to sketch because I told them to make 20 sketches and come back with these 20 sketches tomorrow. And the next day I had 30 red-eyed students who didn't sleep all night because they came back with 20 incredible works of art. They didn't understand what sketching is about. So then the task was up to me to teach them what sketching is. But to be honest, I don't know how to sketch. So I really hope that I can learn a thing or two here today. And I'm really looking forward that Eva-Lotta Lamm will one day come to Amsterdam to teach my students how to sketch, because she'll definitely do a much better job than me. Please give a warm applause to Eva-Lotta Lamm.
Alrighty, wow. Hello. Whew. I need to breathe a bit because this is going to be a first. What I'm trying to do, I'm going to set my timer because I can't see a timer around here anywhere. Bear with me. In the meantime, while I'm fiddling about, I'm going to sketch my talk while I'm talking. So I'm talking about sketchnoting and making a sketch note of my talk while I talk. And if you want to follow along sketching with me, you will have a nicely prepared sketch note summary of my talk at the end of the talk. That is the idea. So if you want to do that, get a piece of paper. I'm going to sketch on an A4 piece of paper, and it's probably going to be full by the end. So if you have a big piece of paper, great. If you have a smaller piece of paper and not everything fits, just turn the page and put the rest on the other page. It's all about improvisation, so don't stress. It's not about stressing. I'm stressing. Not you. Okay, I'm going to set my timer. Here we go. I'm going to do a stopwatch. Okay, reset. Awesome. Okay, good. All right, so a few things about me. That's my name. My name is Eva-Lotta Lamm. I'm German. Grüezi miteinander. I grew up very close to the Swiss border, so I always watched Swiss TV. We had Die Maus vom Mars. Das war so nett. Okay, so if you want to find me on social media, this is me, Eva Lottchen. These are two T's. So T. I apologize for not writing clearly. Yeah, you can find me on all the social media like Twitter, my washing machine, Instagram, cookies, Flickr, whatever. Yeah, this is the hashtag for you to use, and I made up my own hashtag, which is sketch, FEC. If at the end of the talk you have actually sketched something, take a photo of it and tag it with this one, then I'll have a look at it. And I'm going to choose one person to get some digital versions of my sketchnotes books. So there's an incentive, I guess. You should just do it for fun because it's fun. All right, so that's me. I don't have any slides, as you can see. This is the magic, like an overhead projector, but digitally. So you can see my hand, so you will see what I'm sketching. I want to show you a thing or two of my work. And most of my work I just scan. I don't have all my notebooks with me, but I have a notebook with me. So I do sketch notes at conferences. I'm a UX designer as well, but I'm not going to talk about sketching for UX. I'm going to talk about sketchnoting and 5 simple steps how you can change your note-taking to kind of get towards something like this. So I take notes at conferences, so yeah, it's basically written and sketched, and when I think about stuff, I sketch stuff as well. So this is a little bit what it looks like when I go to a conference. So I've been practicing that for a few years, so it doesn't look like that from the start, but it's all a process, you know? It's getting better. And some of my sketches look shit as well. Some of these pages are a bit I don't know. It's not everything's brilliant, you know. I mess things up as well. So it's all about just relaxing and getting into the flow. Whew. All right. I have cheat sheets. I've been practicing that. Okay, good. I actually lied to you when I wrote down the talk. I think I called it Sketches Are the Better Thinkers. I changed the title of my talk. The title of my talk is 5 Steps to Change Your Note-Taking. Boom. I have to groove myself in, you know, in the beginning. My hand is a bit shaky. I don't know about yours. So if in the beginning it's a little bit shaky, it doesn't matter. 5 steps to change your note-taking. This is going to be the topic for today. If you're usually taking notes on the computer, it will not necessarily change your note-taking because it's not about computers. But if you take notes by hand in meetings, at conferences, at research interviews, if you do user research and things like that, there might be a thing or two to take away from this talk. And we're going to start really simple. So most of the time, if you already take notes by hand, you probably write things down, so you're familiar with that. So the first step is actually fairly simple. I just want you to think about how you write things down and do things a little bit differently. And so the first thing I suggest you could try, write things down in chunks instead of lines. So I want to write in chunks, and I'm going to tell you and show you what that means, and not in lines. So basically what that means, this is a nice chunk that I created here. What did I do? Well, I'm stuck to the technology. So basically I want to write about 2 to 4 words per line instead of, I don't know, 10 to 12 per line, what we usually do. And why do I want to do that? Why do I think this is a good idea? Well, the good idea is that if you write in chunks and not in lines, you have 360 degrees around each thought, because what we want to do is we want to have actually one thought per chunk. That's the idea. So what you have to do is you have to listen and kind of summarize the things that you want to remember into chunks and then into thoughts. And then you take one thought per chunk. What that does is it gives you 360 degrees around the thought to put connecting thoughts next to it, not only above and below, as the speaker says it, but connect other things. So it gives you some space to kind of position things and maneuver around. That is cool. I also suggest that you actually leave some space around your chunks. And that is because, if you leave some space around them, you have some space to put more thoughts that connect. And also, we'll get to that later, you will be able to add some other things like structure and maybe some images, and we'll get to that. So leaving some space around your chunks is a really good idea. The next thing, so you see already it's kind of, looks maybe a little bit different from usual note-taking in lines. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, what I'm asking you, and I already did that in my first chunk, so I was cheating, is when you have one thought per chunk, think about what is the most important word in each chunk. So for example here, I already wrote down write in chunks, not in lines. So the important words in here is chunks and lines. And what did I do? I made them bigger. And you want to, in each sentence that you write, pick the word that is the most important one and make it bigger. Because it will stand out in the chunk and it makes it easier for you to scan your page and actually read the keywords quickly. So what we want to do, I'll put it down here, is we want to choose the most important word. And make it big. It is up to your interpretation what you think the most important word is. For me, the word important is important in this one. So choose the most important word in each chunk and make it big. Boom. Sometimes you have two important words in a chunk. Totally fine. Don't make everything important and everything big, then nothing is important. You have to choose like 1 or 2 words per chunk. Totally great. If sometimes in a sentence that you write down, there is no word that is most important because it's like more like a description or something, then you'll think like, oh my God, there's no keyword in it. What can you do? You can cheat. So if there's no keyword, dun dun dun, oh my God. If there is no keyword, what do you do? Suspense. You just give your chunk a title. So you make a keyword up. So give your chunk, I'm going to write it down and then I'm going to show you. Give your chunk a title. Title is important in this one, I think. So give your chunk a title. For example, around here, 2 to 4 words per line. I'm going to give it a title and I'm going to call this, summarizing that, short lines. Boom, that's my title for this chunk. Wonderful, makes it easy to scan. And then this is the little description. So, cool. So this is step number 2. So these are kind of related. And what you already did when you chose a keyword and I told you to write it bigger, you actually created something which is kind of the magic of all kind of visual communication, graphic design, sketchnoting, anything that you make visually. That's the most important thing you want to practice, is actually what you did with that. You added visual hierarchy. Whoa, that's amazing. Visual hierarchy is like, it's the best. So that's step number 3. We want to add visual hierarchy. Boom. You don't have to write fancy like me. I'm gonna also show you how to do that in a second. You can just write it big and normal. But I'm gonna have some fun because I love letters. They are the perfect combination between aesthetics and systems, I think. So, adding visual hierarchy. Dun, 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 that is important. So how do you add visual hierarchy? Why do we want to add visual hierarchy? We want to add visual hierarchy to actually visually show what is important and more important and what is less important. And that makes because of our visual perception, makes our page scannable. It creates little hooks for our eyes on the page to grab onto and to find things. So, adding visual hierarchy. The first way to add visual hierarchy, actually you already saw, it is size, making things bigger. That's a very easy way. Writing things bigger, writing things smaller. The second thing you can do is use style. And I already used it you might have noticed, I wrote the things not only big, but I also wrote them in uppercase, as opposed to lowercase or mixed case. So you can write things in uppercase or lowercase. Another way of adding style, you saw what I did here. I wrote some block letters. That is another style. Writing cursive, all kinds of ways of styles. But basically what I usually use is I use lowercase, uppercase, and block letters. Like 3 levels of hierarchy in your type, that's totally fine. And if you want to practice block letters, I have a colorful pen. If you have a colorful pen, you can use a colorful pen for the stuff that I do in color. If you don't have a colorful pen, then it doesn't matter. Just imagine it's in color and do it in black. It's okay. It's totally fine. Okay, so if you want to practice making block letters, it takes some practice to actually make block letters. But a good way to practice is you write on a practice sheet, you write the letter, the word that you want to write in simple uppercase letters and leave a little bit of space around it, so don't make them very tight. And what you then practice is, this is the skeleton, and now you're putting the flesh around it by trying to keep even space from the skeleton line and just make an outline around it. And this is actually the anatomy of block letters. And what you want to practice is keep even distance from this from the skeleton line. And that's how you start practicing block letters. And when you master that, you just imagine the skeleton, but you don't draw it, and you think like, oh, there's the sea. I can see it in my imaginary vision, in the eye of my mind. And then I just trace around it without it being there. And that, at some point, if you do that often enough, you can just do block letters. Very good way to practice. All right, so style. Another way to add visual hierarchy is something fantastic, contrast. If we talk about contrast, it's basically contrast in density. So it's thin and thick, and when we talk about type, it's regular and bold, or about lettering. And so the boldness of how you write, that is very efficient to create visual hierarchy. So for example, if I have this big here, I can make it bold, and you will see if I make it bold, it will, boom, immediately stand out much more. The trick for making things bold, how you can do that. I mean, one thing that is super simple is if you have a bold pen, you just use that one and go over it. That's kind of, yeah, that's super quick, and that's kind of cheating. You have to change the pen, but it is pretty efficient. If you don't have a thick pen, you still can do it. So how you do it is you write the letter, and then you just put a second stroke next to the first stroke you made, just slightly next to it, like this. Each stroke, you just double it. And if you want to, that's already enough, and if you want to, you can also just quickly fill in the gaps. And that's your quick way of doing bold type if you don't have a fat pen. Great. And as you can see how these things already jump out of the page, amazing. What a difference. The next thing that you can do to create visual hierarchy, and that is almost even more effective than doing it bold, is using color. So if you have a colorful pen, you're in luck because you can write it in color. So if you do block lettering, you can do things like that. You can color in your block lettering. That will make it stand out of the page even more. In terms of visual perception, the distinction in color is one of the strongest ways that we see distinction. So color is more efficient than making things big. That's why in advertising there's the saying, if you can't make it big, make it red. Making it red is always more efficient. So you can already see what's happening here. If I color in my block lettering here, boom, it stands out even more. Also, I mean, if I can also go in and just color things afterwards by just going over it with a colorful pen. So if you didn't decide to make it colorful in the first place, you still can make it colorful, or you can go in and make the background colorful. There are many ways to add color afterwards, so you can kind of improvise and play with that, and it makes things stand out. And the last bit, how you can create visual hierarchy that you can also apply after the fact, is actually quite a good one. It is, you can use underlines, and frames to make things stand out. For example, if I just make a frame around the important words, boom, all of a sudden they all stand out. Or I can just underline all of them. That is pretty efficient as well. The frame is heavier than the underline, so more emphasis. So you have different levels. And by starting to experiment with this, you will find out what works for you and how much emphasis you can give with each element. It's a good idea to always have the title stand out a bit. So I'm gonna put a frame around my title. And I know that everybody loves making banners. So let's make a freaking banner out of our title. So in order to make a banner out of anything is you write it down, then you put the box around it. That's the trick about text in boxes. You always want to first make the text and then the box. Otherwise, Murphy's law of text in boxes is if you first make the box and then the text will never fit. The same is true when you sketch buttons or speech bubbles. First the speech, then the bubble. That's why it's called speech bubble and not bubble speech. All right, so we have the box, and now we make the banner. So in order to make a banner out of any box, is you start at the bottom right corner and you add something that makes it look like a little Z, like this. Here, yeah. Here, now I messed up here because now I don't have space for that, but I don't care because I'm a renegade. Okay, so you make a Z here, and then you make the mirrored Z on the other side. So I'll just go through it. Damn, doesn't matter. Okay, and now we do a horizontal line to this one. Here we go, on each side. And now we close these boxes. I make them with a little V shape, like this, so it's kind of fancy. And then you want to close this is kind of the back side of the ribbon. And close it with a vertical line. You can add like some lines here to kind of give a shadow effect, and boom, you have a banner. So if I do it small here so you can see it without any interruption, you do the Z and the other Z like this. And then you do the parallels. And then you do the verticals. You could do this just vertical here, but if you want to have like a nice little fancy end, you can do this. And this is your banner, and here would be the text. Isn't that beautiful? Everybody loves banners. I'm bored by banners, but hey, good. When I first learned them, I loved them. Okay, so here we have the means how you can add visual hierarchy. And I have a tip for you. A little tip, when thinking about visual hierarchy, you will figure it out bit by bit while you're going along. But what you eventually want to do is you want to develop consistency. Consistency. Exactly. So you want to settle on maybe 2 or 3 styles and use them consistently. So all the first level points, they all get the same block lettering treatment or color treatment, and then you use frames for the same things and underlines. But you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. In the beginning, it might be a little bit all over the shop, but that's the fun of learning. Cool. So that was point number 3. Point number 4, what we're going to do, and we already did it a little bit in point number 3. You see, it's building on top of each other. We want to do something else. After we had hierarchy, we want to add structure. What is structure? Structure, we already created structure, actually, just by placing things on the page. We created a spatial structure. And people often come to me and they ask me, how do I know where to put things on the page when I'm sketchnoting? I don't know what people are saying. It doesn't matter. Do it in chunks. And if something sounds like it is related to something that you already made or already have on the page, put it closer to it. If it's something that seems to be new, put it further away. And then just work with it and create local structure and take the new piece of information and put it in relation to what you already have. That is as good as it gets when you're doing stuff in real time. And don't stress out, because you can always add structure later. This is the magic now. We're getting to that. So once you, exactly, so that's the second tip, and then I tell you how. First tell you what, and then I tell you how. So I'm going to connect this here as well, so the tip is connected to this. So another tip that I have is capture first. Actually writing things down as we did now. Capture first and structure later. Because often hindsight is a beautiful thing. So after the talk has been going on for a while, or after the talk has finished, you have a much better idea of the overall structure because you heard it all and you have got a picture in your mind. And it becomes much clearer very often. It becomes much clearer after you heard the talk. But as you're sketching in real time, you have to put things on the page to capture stuff. So a bit of a conundrum. But do your best by placing things where you think they make sense while you're doing it, and then you can add structure later. So there are 3 ways of adding structure. So the first one, you've already seen me do it. You can connect chunks. So we can connect some chunks. And how do we connect chunks? We can connect chunks with lines and arrows. That's the most common things. So you've already seen me do it. Here I already did some arrows. Here I did dotted lines. You can do all kinds of different ways, different kinds of lines. You could do really, again, you want to develop consistency at some point, but just for demonstration's sake, you could do really fat arrows. They probably mean something different from thin arrows, you know, if you have bigger things that belong together and small things that belong together. Again, play around and you'll figure it out. At some point, you want to develop consistency. But you'll figure it out. So connecting things is one way of doing it. The other thing is, so that means things belong together. They share some common thought or some common theme. The opposite of that is you can separate things that absolutely do not belong together. And how do you do that when you're Donald Trump? You build a freaking wall, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to build walls. We can separate chunks. I don't agree to this man at all. You want to separate chunks with dividers. So these are basically lines that are in between things. So I could, for example, say these things are a little bit close, so I want to put a divider here to say these two tips, they are not related. I don't know. I don't use dividers very often because it's kind of a negative thing. I'm more positive, so I like to connect. Yeah, I'm a hippie. I'm turning into one. See, I'm not even using a computer for my presentation. Soon I'll have dreads. Okay, the third way of doing things is you can group things, you know, like sit around in a circle, be a group, have a cup of tea and stuff. Oh my God, where is this going? You can group chunks by making a community, by using containers. Containers are basically frames around things that make groups out of things. So you can, the simplest kind of container you could make is like a bubble, right? So this was my point number 1. So here we have a container for my point number 1, and then I could have a container around my point number 2 if I wanted to structure that. And usually it's a good idea to wait until the end of the talk to do these big containers, because then you have everything there and then you know what you want to group. So I'm going to leave it here and not put more structure on it right now. But you get the idea. So you can connect, you can separate, and you can group, and you can do that after you capture. So that is great. You might have noticed we already have quite some visual notes without having drawn anything. So even if you can't draw, you can do this. I have to look onto my timer to see how I'm doing. Fantastic, 25 minutes. All right, so now we get to point number 5, and now it gets scary because we're going to start to draw. So the last bit that you can do, if you do all these things without doing the 5th bit, you will be already much better off than what you might do now already. So the last thing that you can do is you can add visual hooks, little pictures. I call them visual hooks because they are like little anchors for your eye to hook onto when they are browsing through the page looking for information. Like an eagle gliding over the fields looking for mice. Sorry. Okay, you could also say anchors. So basically little pictures like the sketch in sketch nodes. Wow, it's getting exciting. All right, so a little picture. For example, when I say here adding visual hooks or anchors, I could just add a little picture to it. For example, because I am not creative, I'm making an anchor. So by doing a little cross with a circle on top and an arc on the bottom, that is my anchor. I can, like when I'm doing the block letters, I can do a second line next to it and fill it out to kind of bulk it up a bit, to make a little bit more of a substantial anchor. Here we go. That is okay for now. And because it's a visual hook, you know, I could put an arc and another little arc and a circle. Boom, it's visual, it's an eye. Woohoo! yeah, here I have a visual hook or a visual anchor. So the idea is we want to, ideally what I usually do is we want to create one icon per chunk. So for major, or not the tiniest chunk, but for the main chunks and maybe for smaller chunks, again, you know, like you start with the more important things. But that is one of the things how you can work. That's also a reason why when you leave some space around your chunks, you can also add images later. You can add images at the same time that you write your chunks, but you can also do it later. So one icon per chunk. For example, if I wanted to illustrate that, if these are my chunks here, so I have these little chunks that I have, boom, 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 and then I want to say one icon per chunk. I'm using a color now because I put some visual hierarchy into my sketches. So here I have an icon. I don't know, this chunk is talking about apples. This chunk is talking about ideas. We'll get to sketching little icons in a second. This one is about boxes. Boring. This one is about triangles. Boring. So, but basically this is my little illustration. So it's one icon per chunk. Here I have my chunk and then I have the icons. Okay, the next thing is, why do we do this? The great thing about these icons is they can really guide the eye, because from our perception, we are visual animals. We are really good at looking at icons. We are much faster to read a concept or get a gist out of a visual thing than we are at reading. There was a study, I don't have the citation right now because I don't have it written down anywhere, but there was a recent study, and I'm going to tweet about it, that looked at how quickly we can read concepts out of visuals. They showed people photos and they just flashed them for an eighth of a second. And 13 milliseconds was the minimum amount of time, or at that time we could actually read concepts out of photos. Something quite complex like a picnic, out of a picnic scene or something. That means 13 milliseconds, that means 8 concepts per second. That is about, with every eye fixation, we have about 8 eye fixations per second. So while glancing over the page, actually with each eye fixation, we are able to kind of look at a different visual and get the general gist of the concept, which is quite cool, I think. That's why visual hooks work so well. So they guide the eye, so they make my page scannable, which is really cool. And I'll get to that in a second as well. So they make it scannable. So they guide my eye. I put a little eye here, and then I can do like I don't know, maybe like little arrows. The eye is guided. Boom, 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 each fixation. That would be my little image. For visual hierarchy, I could maybe do, like, you know, with like the Olympics, 1, 2, 3, like a little pedestal where the winners are. You know, some things are better or more important than others. So what you actually want to do, you want to create really simple images that are made out of basic shapes. Think wireframes of objects. So simple images made out of basic shapes. Here we go. Basically, dots, lines, triangles, rectangles, circles. Boom. And we'll get to that in a second because we still have time. I have everything planned. So I'm going to fill out a little bit more. So when we talk, I want to put some images now. So sometimes I can just be really literal. So this talks about if there's no keyword, give your chunk a title. So if these are my chunks, I put a title on top. So this is my image for this. Choose the most important word in each chunk and make it big. So I could put some chunks again. And what do I do in each chunk? I choose one that I make big and bold, maybe. That could be if I wanted to add some more emphasis to it, I could add some color to say this is what I do. So basically it's not very complicated. Simple images, so writing in chunks, not in lines. So I want to have a page that is kind of full of little chunks versus a page traditionally that is full of lines. What would that look like in your mind's eye? You can already see it. Boom, 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 boom. And maybe I just want to say, okay, I don't want this. I want this. Deet, 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 deet. I like making little cartoon things around things. So if it's about leaving space, I could also do these things like, ooh, there's some space here, it can breathe. Nice. One thought per chunk. Yeah, how do you do thoughts? Well, you can do a thought bubble, for example. So I put a thought bubble here. Boom, boom. And I put a big 1 in it because there's only one thought per chunk. So you can see it is not rocket science. All right. So these are basically the 5 steps. And now that I told you everything I wanted to tell you, roughly, before we get to just sketching 1 or 2 things, I go back to my tip. Capture first, structure later. So I can actually do some cool stuff and add some extra structure because now I have everything here. So now I know I can maybe fill in here my other big parts. I can also do that after the talk is finished, but that would be the idea. So I have like they work really well to attract the eye. If I wanted to, I could, I think it works really well for these 3 here. I could add the similar kind of, heading for the 2 other ones that I have, and I didn't do that. So I could, for example, here write chunking, because the first part was about chunking, and I do that in my block letters, or maybe in my very big, bold writing, if you're not into block letters yet, like just doing double lines, So here we talk about chunking, and here we talk about adding keywords, right? So this is what these are about. So now with hindsight, because now I know what I actually talked about, or now you know what I talked about. I knew it before. That's the trick about giving talks, knowing what you're going to talk about. Okay, so you can see, and then I can fill in the color. So now I can already see that there are 5 really big sections: chunking, keywords, visual hierarchy, visual hooks, and structure. Boom. If it is important to me which order they were in, I could also say, well, this was number 1, and this was number 2. And no matter where they ended up on the page, so the order in which they are on the page is not that important, because actually numbering things with big numbers is super efficient. The numbers don't even have to be in front of it all the time. They just always have to be the same structure. So always making them the same size and with a circle around it, or the same kind of container, our eyes will pull it together. And if now I wanted to, it is still kind of a little bit too messy for me, I could then go, okay, now I'm doing the grouping thing. And a very flexible way of doing grouping when you don't have like clear-cut edges is either doing these blobs or doing clouds. So I'm going to put some clouds around each group. Here we go. It is maybe not, in my first attempt, the most beautiful sketch note, but I think it's already starting to work. So I'm making a cloud around each of my sections. Here we go. And here we have the visual hooks and the structure. See, here we really need a divider. Boom. Get the cloud around here. Okay. And the tip is part of this. Here we go. Okay. And if I wanted to make it even clearer here, I could actually knock back the space in between so that these clouds, like when you have white clouds on a blue sky, here I have white clouds on an orange paper. Actually, they stand out against the background, and by knocking the background back, you can actually see the shapes that remain a little bit better. So you could do something like that. You could also use a shading pen for that, or you could use a thicker pen to make the borders thicker to be able to see how they stand out. But this is already getting quite okay to give me kind of the idea of I have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big groups, and then things that I do in between each, and then I would kind of color these things in and kind of have a summary of what I have been just saying. Just one quick thing about sketching things before I run out of time. Sketching simple object. I'm gonna tweet my slides afterwards. So if you didn't draw with me, so it is about using simple shapes. So basically, if you can do a dot, if you can do a line, if you can do a triangle, a square or a rectangle, and a circle, and variations of it. So an oval or a rectangle here. You can do almost anything. Like, even a rectangle can be so many things. So a rectangle can, by putting a V in there and putting another line and another line, it's an email or a letter if you're still into snail mail. I mean, like, I like getting letters. A rectangle could also be, if you do a 45-degree line on each corner to the back and then close it. And then do this. It can be a box. It can be a house-moving box. Here we go. That's for house moving. Yeah. All your things can go in there. Things. Ooh. Who knows what that is? It could also be briefcase. People who go to work. It could be something that everybody of you has around their necks, so a little conference badge when you put the hole in there, and then you have this triangle, and then you have the lanyard. Here we go. Ooh, conference badge. Eva-Lotta. That's me. It could be something even more cheery than a conference badge. Could be a birthday cake. It could be, oh yeah, we're in Switzerland. Here we go. What could it be in Switzerland?
A modular grid.
A modular grid. Here we go. It could be a modular grid. Awesome. It could be the Swiss flag. But if you're me, yeah, we'll get to that. It could be, it's like the best of all worlds, a modular grid. It could be chocolate. Here are the little pieces of chocolate. Here we go. It could be chocolate. It could be a cheese. Well, cheese is actually, yeah, I mean, I like doing cheese more like with a triangle. So if you start with a triangle, like this, with a little rounded edge, and then you do the box. Here we have the box, so it's actually a box. And then you do some circles. Here we go. Here we have our cheese. Perfect. So it is about combining simple shapes in different ways. It is like Lego, and when you take these simple shapes and put them together in different ways, you get all kinds of things. And if you're interested in that, now I'm going to break the internet, because now I'm doing analog with digital to show you the internet with analog means. I am crazy. I have an Instagram. This is my Instagram. So now, technology, friends, technology. Here we go. This is my Instagram, and on my Instagram for a while I've been doing these. I've basically showing people how to draw stuff. Like, for example, I do little videos like this. For example, this is how to draw a banner. You already know it because I showed you. So do the word, draw a rectangle. It is step by step for everybody to follow along. This is the banner in the other direction. So I showed you the banner on the bottom. Now you have banner things on the top. Oh, advanced. So yeah, I'll do these little videos. I have, I think, roughly 50 by now. So you can learn how to do stuff. For example, what was the latest one? Oh, this week we are getting into really complicated stuff. Everybody's nemesis, drawing hands. So this week, we're already advanced. You can start, but it's basically like putting together an oval and another oval, and an arc, and another arc, and another arc, and another arc, and a line and a line, and then you can do all kinds of cool stuff. So if you want to have some lessons, just go and follow me on Instagram, and you can sketch and knock yourself out with that. So, all right, I'm gonna tweet my slide. So this again is, oops, Here we go. This again is me on social media. I also have a website. If you sketch this, take a photo of it and tweet it with Sketch FEC because I want to see what you did. I have a website which is called sketchnotesbook.com. This is like collections of all my sketch notes from conferences from like the last 120 years. I sell them as books and as PDFs. If you want to have a PDF of that, you can all find them for free on Flickr. You don't have to buy anything. But if you want to, code YAY gives you 20% off all of the PDFs. Was there anything else? Okay, yeah, here as well is... I went traveling around the world and I did sketch notes of my travels, so 14 months of backpacking, and I'm going to relive my trip. We left on the 25th of September 2 years ago, and I'm going to actually post on secretsfromtheroad.com. I'm going to actually you can relive the trip with me and go around the world, because I'm going to post one double spread sketch note of every day where we were and things that we did on this blog, and it's going to start on the 25th of September and it's going to run for 14 months. So it's like a virtual trip. So if you want to join me on that, you're very welcome to come along. We're going to start in India. All right. And with this, I say thank you very much.
Wow, that was fantastic. I always thought that the best way to structure things was by using HTML, but this is maybe much quicker. Here's a nice chunk of grit, modular grit chocolate. Yay. What I tried when you said you should sketch, and what I did, no, I'll type. So I used my iPad and I used IA Writer to do exactly what you did, but then in lines. And now I was scrolling back, and indeed, it doesn't work at all. So
for some things, it's great. When you're writing a book, probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're not sure about styling and adding it later, yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Fantastic talk. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And it looked so cool seeing the hand working there. Really, really beautiful. Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah, there's a question over there. Is there a microphone for... microphone's coming up.
So first of all, it looks beautiful. And second of all, do you fix things and do you have an approach for fixing things? Not just single words, but if you have drawn out any more complex or more detailed shapes or words or titles, how do you deal with that?
So, I mean, sketch notes, when you do sketch notes at conferences and in meetings, the thing is, well, it's real time. And you do it as good as you can, and there will be mistakes. The first thing is not freak out about your mistakes. Some things you can fix, you know, sometimes you cross things out, draw over it. If you do a wrong line, you put a better line on it. I also use that to work with myself, like, you know, preparing this talk. I did it by sketching. And of course, the first version is never that perfect. So here I have, this was the first version of this talk. So already, like, all of it is already there. The structure is not quite there yet. The visual hierarchy is not quite there yet. And then the next version I drew after kind of getting the content out was this one. And you can see, well, I thought, oh no, this is not good because then I don't have enough space here, and I crossed things out. Everything in green is what I want to say and not forget about saying, so I have little annotations for myself. And then I practice it again. That was like the next thing that I practiced, and the blue ones are my annotations again. And this was my last thing that I practiced kind of last night. That's actually a little bit neater than what I did today because I was a little bit nervous, so this is what I did today. But you see, and drawing each of these took like, the first one, I mean, well, each of these took 15 minutes because I did the whole thing, or 10 minutes, I don't know. Without the talking, it's a bit faster. So, yeah, just do it again because it's quick. And you will, every time you do it again, you will learn something about it, so yeah.
So you're not superhuman after all, are you?
No, I'm not.
It was great. Thank you
No,
very much.
I create stuff I don't like all the time. And before I did the talk in the lunch break, I actually warmed up and I just do the little things. And some of them, you know, these scissors, they are shit. And these scissors are actually quite cool. So yeah, get used to the fact that you'll produce things that are not great and that you won't like. It's part of life. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any more questions?
It could also be a request to sketch something that you don't know how to sketch, and then you can see me struggle.
There's a question over there.
Thanks, that was great. Sketching talks is one thing, sketching meetings might be something completely different. How do you handle meetings that go berserk, where the topic shifts all the time, you know, like typical nightmare meetings?
Yeah, I mean, like nightmare meetings are nightmare meetings. I mean, the sketching won't make the meeting better and the content better, but if you just like getting the meeting on track, you won't do by sketching. But if I write notes like for meetings where it's maybe more detail, I don't do full-on sketch notes for everything all the time. So you can see that some of my notes, they look more like this. So they are basically only written, but the one thing that really helps is writing in chunks and making things bigger inside of the chunks. And what I do sometimes, I have, you can take a picture of that. I have too much paper here. Some Poo-mojis. I got wild with the Poo-mojis. I have some standard icons that are super easy to sketch, that I use standard icons in meetings. So just, even if I write and everything is text, if I just sprinkle some icons, if there is, for example, an email follow-up, just because it's so easy to scan the page and find all the email icons, it makes it really easy to kind of have scannable notes. The same for when I take notes at user research interviews. You know, if there's an idea I have during that, or if there's a question that they ask, or if there's a problem or a really bad conflict or something important, I just sprinkle the written page with little icons, and already that makes a big difference, even if you don't do the full-on structuring. Yeah. I'm going to show you how to draw a Poo-moji, because Poo-mojis are amazing. Here we go. Poo-moji, you do a little arc, and then you do another little arc, and then you do a little curve like this, and then you do another arc, another arc, another arc, step it down, close it, circle, circle, dot, dot. Poo-moji, yay.
Thank you so much. This was a fantastic talk.